generate some energy around it. So everybody thought about something comes to everybody's mind. So now the issue is can you express what was on your mind?
All right, number 6. The last one where it is determine the measure of man's ability to perceive the purpose of himself.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of hits.
So what did you make you think about?
Made me think about something that I read one time that
Well, the initiatory process is you have to go back within yourself and have to examine yourself to find out who you really are, where these things really come from. Because you're not your mind, you're not your body, you're not your thoughts. Your mind, your body, and your thoughts are vehicles, just like your car. You're not your car. The car is for a purpose, but some people identify with their car. Something happens to their car, they think it happens to them. Because you identify with it. Whatever you identify with then controls you. The only way that you can gain control of something is to not to identify with it. Because once you don't identify with it, you separate from it, then you can look at it objectively and cannot control it. So then if you totally identify with your ideas, or your thoughts, or your feelings, or your body, then you become controlled by it. Once you can step away from it, once you step away from it and pull yourself away from it, you're no longer controlled by it, then you can control it. Because you are not those things. You are the soul. That's who you really are. Which goes back up to psychology. Which is this is probably one of the critical keys, right? In terms of this definition. People really meditate, reflect, and contemplate. If you get knowledge and you don't reflect, meditate, and contemplate on one idea, one thought, to where you can really get deep into that thought, you really don't gain wisdom or understanding. That's why people have so much knowledge. They don't have any wisdom. They constantly dream more, I want more, I want more, I want more, but they don't get deep into, because there's one idea. If you get deep into one idea, it will lead you to all ideas. Because everything is connected. We're so busy, we got to have a lot. It's like I'm a martial artist. Martial arts, all you got to do is get one punch or one kick. Excellent. And you master that one thing, you can take everybody out. You can master it. Pow! Boom. That's it. You ain't got to do all this other kind of stuff. But we so trained that we got to be fancy and have all this, and we get caught up. We miss the point. So I'm saying that because I was reading on initiation and talked about the development of passion for the information, passion for the knowledge. And I talked about that when you savor it, like when you're eating something that you really enjoy, how you wash it around, you hold it, you really want to taste it. You got to be the same way for the knowledge. You got to hold it, you got to get into it, you got to taste it. That's how it becomes a part of you. Somebody else has a hand over here.
Number 5. Aesthetic.
5 or aesthetic, okay. I always, when I'm looking at this stuff, we look at how our communities are, and the whole issue of aesthetics and beautiful. In terms of how our schools being so drab, and, neighborhoods and lacking color, and those things that has a direct effect on consciousness. A direct effect on consciousness. And even in terms of one's life, in terms of being able to live beautiful, to relate to things that are beautiful. It's very important. So anyway, I just want to put this out there. We'll be referring back and forth to some of these ideas at various times. And also if you look at the bottom, it says ASC 69. That stands for Aquarian Spiritual Center 69, 1969. So this is when this was given out in terms of the Aquarian Spiritual Center in 1969. Okay, let's get into, let's continue on in Stolen Legacy. We're on page, on each one of these, that will be at least a semester to give you the basic tools, and then you would have to start using these things again, we just giving you an introductory, to these basic ideas. Now, chapter number 2, circumstances of identity between the Egyptian and Greek systems. Indictment and persecution, I'm going to try to move through it because I want ideas on parapsychology. We're doing the whole thing, a whole series of articles on there on Afrocentricity. Right?
Really?
Yes. They call it extreme Afrocentricism. But it's interesting because I'll bring it next week. To pick it up, you have to go to one of these major newsstands, where they have a lot of the non-traditional magazines. But they talk about stuff Farrakhan is saying, that Jefferson is saying. They talk about John Henry Clark. They talk about Dr. Ben. They mention the works of Diop as probably being the only what they would call renowned scholar, that is utilized, and everything else is really not of the mainstream. What basically they were saying is that they had a whole article on Stolen Legacy saying that this is mythological history, that Stolen Legacy, the book, is actually mythology, and it's not really based upon facts. And then they go into explaining why. And some of the points are interesting points, which will require some follow-up research, and some of the other points are kind of subjective. Then they have a brother in there, a black man, talking about this extreme Afrocentric thought, and how it's almost like we're really being similar to what the Europeans did during the Age of Enlightenment, when they claimed history and how, from their own point of view, and understand that we're going back and we're doing the same thing. But it's interesting because these magazines are read, from a whole body of intellectual people who are in, universities and colleges, and then that creates a foundation for people then to look at what we're doing as so-called pseudoscience, what is in pseudoscience.
You remember the author of the article?
The woman is a Jewish woman. Lefkowitz.
No, I don't even want to read it. Yeah, she's phony. What's the name of the magazine? What's the name of the
Okay.
DC? What's the name of the
magazine called Skeptic?
Skeptic?
Called Skeptic.
And what issue is it?
This is this month's issue. I think it's.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's this month.
See,
I can bring it in next week, or I'll get it back to you.
That's not our only article either. We have some circulation.
Her degree and her background is in philosophy, but she, something like that, but she's always trying to quote history and other things, and she has no real pseudoscience and stuff. She's from Western College.
read the Jewish Onslaught. You'll find out a lot about this.
The whole chapter.
Because she's corrupt
And
to the
Jewish
core.
Onslaught is what? What is that?
That's written by Tony Martin, Dr. Tony Martin. Because she was one of the
She's
leading
the main,
people
okay.
that led the attack against the brothers.
The main culprit is the attack on the secret division.
Right.
Okay. All right. It's interesting to come out of Caltech, magazine. So.
There was also an article in the February 28th issue of U.S. News and World Report by a guy named John Leo, and he was saying basically the same thing. The title of the article was Tainting History.
The essential nature of knowledge itself is the province of epistemology to distinguish between absolute and relative truth, and to examine the validity of the premises upon which the assumptions of knowledge is based. So you got to go back to the premises upon which these assumptions are based.
I just had one question. These people would look like they had this cultural diversity thing at work.
They have define truth based upon some assumptions that they say are true. So then if we begin to raise a counter-truth, it undermines the assumptions upon which this particular truth is based. If you undermine the assumptions upon which this particular truth is based, it also undermines the assumption from which these other truths become based. And if their whole identity is based upon how they now perceive these things as being true, you undermine their whole sense of identity. Then if you undermine their whole sense of identity, then you're talking about a depth, a feeling of that they're being destroyed. So then there becomes a whole issue of self-preservation kicks in, and then they lose all rational basis.
Dr. Jeffrey was on TV today. I caught the last part of it. I didn't know. Well, I saw yesterday that he was going to be on it, and I didn't think to pull out my tape and sit with these jobs. But this, I forget this guy. This show he was on. But this guy, he was a Jewish guy. He claims that Dr. Jeffrey was.
You undermine the primacy, all the knowledge that's being promoted today is based upon a set of assumptions. Religions are based upon a set of assumptions, people's identity, Jewish right to Israel, all the things are based upon certain assumptions. If you undermine these assumptions, then you undermine their so-called right for doing what they're doing. So then if they're no longer right for doing what they do, they may be wrong. If they've been wrong, then what does that mean? That means that you are guilty. So then are you going to voluntarily just say, I'm guilty? No. You're going to try to maintain your position of truth. That means then if you're guilty, you don't have no right to be owning these things that you own and in any position of authority and power. So then, to justify this, you have to then discredit the other side so that you can maintain your position. And that's because, but then we talked about the difference between absolute truth and relative truth. They're functions from relative truth. Because relative truth is relative to how you think and where you see. Absolute truth don't give a crap about where you're coming from because it is. They're not coming from absolute truth. So the issue we're trying to deal with in dealing with stolen legacy, talking about you move it back to absolute truth. Because if we're talking about souls, members who experience, that means the soul is immortal. That means that all the experience of the human race from the beginning of evolution lies within the memory of the soul.
Right.
And so that if you're going to become truly godlike or divine, to become godlike or divine, you have to go back down into your own unconscious mind and confront all the negativity that you have ever done within your whole evolution, not just within your life, this life, but in all your lives. That's why on the death, they say you go into hell. Well, going into hell is going down into all that negativity and confronting all the negativity of all your past lives. The only way you can survive that confrontation with all that negativity and evil is if you have now purged your consciousness now and have gained the truth, both in living a life of virtue and gained the knowledge that enables you to then battle those forces.
But isn't that exactly why human nature doesn't seem to improve, because we have not resolved the past issue? Because that negativity is still there and it has not been dealt with from the past. And so therefore, the world seems to get worse and worse because it just keeps accumulating and multiplying.
Dealing with epistemology, your first assumption is that humanity is getting worse. So now, that's why I'm putting this stuff out, in terms of how we think. relative to what is humanity getting worse?
Well, or it does not seem to be approaching any kind of, it doesn't seem to be evolving, progressing. You know what I'm saying?
Relative to
Either
what?
it is-
What is
either-
your standard that you're judging this from?
Probably from a time when the world was more at peace. And there wasn't, essentially that. And I'm probably referring back to the times when probably religions were. I don't know that the level of decadence was any less than it is now. Maybe I don't know. What is your
You first and put it on me now. No, okay. But this is the point in terms of our thinking. We haven't been trained to really think deeply. That's why these aspects of philosophy are critical. Because once we train our mind to be able to start thinking in these terms, then our thinking changes. Because first of all, we haven't been to other sessions, we were saying, we started off talking about we here are in a certain position within the whole spectrum of evolution, right? And so when you say that things are getting worse, relative to what? Are they getting worse? Now, why I'm saying that is, the basic premise is that we are moving toward a goal. The whole human race is moving toward a goal. And that goal is for the whole human race to evolve to a level of spiritual consciousness. That's what all of it is about. For us to develop the consciousness of being aware of and united with the spiritual or higher cosmic reality. That's why the human physical bodies were even evolved to develop the nervous system and the consciousness to even recognize that these things exist. So now if the whole human race is one body, the whole human race is one body. So that body is moving toward this goal. Now to move toward that goal in the ancient times, we were at a very separated, different people lived in very separated places all over the planet, right? Little villages, lived in villages, right? Right? Okay. What one village was doing, another village didn't necessarily know what it was doing, right? What one country was doing, another country didn't know what it was doing. So even we talk about these city-states, they were basically small groups of people who ruled everybody. The rest of the people lived out in the rural area, they were farming, had little farms, living the way they were living.
But it seems to me that in ancient times, people would have had to have been closer to that spiritual, been at a higher spiritual level, because based on the fact that most of everything that we know today is already taken from what they achieved then, and they had to be at some higher level of spirituality in order to obtain, to receive this knowledge, to be open to it and to receive it.
What type of things are you talking about?
Well, the sciences or whatever, as far as anything new, everything that modern man is calling new technology is really old technology, that they've taken and expanded on.
Right. But again, the issue I raised is that it was a very small minority of individuals that maintained and had the knowledge. In Kemet, compared to the total population, the priesthood was a small minority of the total population. The total population was basically everyday people, farming, who followed the dictates of the state that was ruled by the pharaohs and the priesthood, who were a group of initiates who had went through a body of knowledge. And then they created ceremonies, rituals, and statecraft based upon this higher knowledge, which kept the masses in order.
But do you suppose that the masses didn't, by virtue of just even going through the rituals, let's just speak of some of the...
Sure they did, but they were not conscious. That's why the masses of people today believe in the spiritual myths. You know, they believe the story of Jesus walking on the water, that he walked on water. Now there's a truth in there. They believe the literal as opposed to what it means. It means that Jesus had mastered the water on the emotional plane, because water relates to the emotions. So he had mastered the emotions, so he could now stay on top of his emotions, which is one of the levels that you have to go up. It's one of the initiations. So even in that day, when they talked about Osiris and Horus and Heru and Isis, they literally believed that these were living entities and not cosmic principles. So the ultimate goal is for the masses to achieve the level that the sages and the hierophants achieve. That's the ultimate destination of the human race. So in that process of moving to that goal, we have to learn lessons. So where we are today is we're at a period where the opposite, the material consciousness, is at its maximum. But everything has a purpose, right? Because when you get into logic, you get into dialectics, understand the opposites. To have a whole, you have to have a union of opposites. For you to be whole, you have to know your good side and your bad side. If you just repress your bad side and try to go off and just ignore it and go into the good, when you get to a certain level, the bad side's going to kick in. Because you can't repress it. You have to recognize it and regenerate it, if you understand the difference. What's true for you as an individual is true for us as a human race. So as a human race, we had to experience both our spiritual heights and our material lows. So we can understand the level of destruction we're capable of, so that when we move to a higher level, we have learned that lesson and will not disuse or misuse the power. We only use 5% of our brain. If we could use 30% of our brain at the level of moral character that we have, we would have been to blow the planet up. You understand what I'm saying? So when you said that we're at a lower level, you're basically looking at the outer as opposed to the inner. Because at the same time, technologically, we have the capability now to educate and communicate with the total planet simultaneously. Technology is here today. What is not here is the wisdom and the consciousness to use it in that way, which is what the next order is all about. It's only if we can get people educated into the wisdom that it does become their value system. And so all of it is a part of the big program. And then the other people, evolution, let me do this one. Evolution is a dialectical process. It basically goes this way. We started off here, this is unconscious. This is self-conscious. This is superconscious. Or you can say cosmic. Or you can say universal or spiritual conscious. Evolution of human race, we start out at an unconscious level. I mean, the masses, when we were living in if you go all the way back to the Twa, they lived in unity with nature. They saw no separation between themselves and nature. We were all one. We had brothers and sisters with the water, the trees, the birds, and the animals without brothers and our sisters. We saw ourselves as one with nature, no separation. Then we evolved in as we started migrating over the planet and having different experiences and evolving, we became more and more self-conscious in terms of us being separated from environment. The Europeans are the extreme point of self-consciousness. Rugged individualism. Everybody else don't count. I'm the main thing. That's extreme self-consciousness. That's the dialectical opposite of unconscious. From there, the next level is superconscious. Because what you do now is you become conscious of your unity with the universe, but you're conscious of it. Before you're not conscious of it. You just like living in paradise. You didn't know you was naked because what's naked? We're all just here. So then this is a part of the process. The same thing is true for an individual. You start off as unconscious. If you're a little baby's kind of like, if we can look through a baby's eyes, the way they saw and relate to things around them is not the way we adults see stuff. We see, oh, that's a chair, and the kid may see that as whatever. We impose what we think on them. That's a part of the problem with kids. We take our understanding and we impose it on a kid. Where a kid is really a pure soul. They're still close to the spirit world. So they have a different relationship. Because we're not trained to understand this, a lot of times we try to repress it. Don't do this, don't do that, because you might be afraid of it. You might have hang-ups with it. So next thing you know, they start repressing this. And that becomes their personal shadow. And that's a whole other. But then from the unconscious, and you don't even know who you are. You're just out here, moving around, grabbing stuff. You don't know your cup. You just hitting it, putting everything in your mouth, trying to figure out, what is this thing? Ooh, this tastes bad, this tastes good. Oh, this hurt, this feels good. So then you're starting to know. Same thing we're doing as human race. Then you get an ego, then you say, oh, I'm whatever, based upon these experiences, right? If you're in a loving environment and people are teaching you about positive self-concept and you can do whatever you want to do, you think this way. If people calling you stupid, knucklehead fools and niggas and you this and this, and you grow up with that. Then from there, depending upon how you've been conditioned, depends upon how you relate to going here. Because if you've been conditioned to be negative, then you're going to go into a self-destructive mode. When something happens in your life, it changes. If you've been developing a positive mode, then you're going to constantly discipline yourself to try to actualize your higher creative capabilities and abilities. So what is true for the human race is also true for us as an individual. And also is true for the universe. Because the universe through us is becoming conscious. So on that, now, the life of the planet, because our solar system at one time did not exist. And sometime in the distant future, it's going to cease to exist. Because we're based around the sun is a star. The star has a life, like everything in the universe. Basic projection of the life of the sun is 10 billion years. They say that we are 5 billion years in. So we're halfway through the evolutionary process of the life of the sun. So then, I have a proposition or a thesis is that we are at the midpoint now. If you look around yourself, you're saying we are at the midpoint because right now we are become so self-conscious. It's self. I mean, people listen to a lot of these rap songs. I got to get mine, so if I got to take it from you, I'll take it. That's just self. They have no understanding, first of karma and reincarnation. They don't understand how they're interconnected or connected with the whole. But then they've been conditioned, we've been conditioned from those who came from the whole environment of self. So then we're going to reap negative consequences until we wake up. So until we as the adults wake up, because all the death around us is telling us something's wrong. So it's telling us we're living the wrong way. So unless we change our lifestyle and our value system, it ain't going to change. No matter how much we say, oh, we don't like it.
But anyway, is it your understanding that water is the sign of consciousness?
Say the water is a sign of what?
Consciousness.
Water?
The water is consciousness.
Yeah, that's one of its.
Well, and I'm seeing that as relates to the new dispensation that we are moving into the Aquarian age.
Mm-hmm. Water really deal with purification.
Okay, that too is also conducted energy. But as it relates to this discussion, if we once related to the Aquarian age, which is symbolized by the gold bearer. Okay.
It's the age of purification.
Age of purification.
Because the first step in initiation is purification. You can't go and access higher knowledge if you don't become purified. And the purification process is the virtue. Virtues are the virilities of the soul. Soul feeds on virtue in an ethical lifestyle because you can't will knowledge without character.
So then in the human evolutionary stage, if we, or in the age of Aquarius and we're into that age, is that indicative that our consciousness that we will become, that we will start moving,
Yes.
closer to.
As you raise that question, I'll show you this. It's all related, so. Okay, we can put it, a couple of things. One is, what's the key word for the age of Aquarius?
Knowledge.
Keyword. Every astrological age has a key word. And the key word is the key word. Key. So the key is what you open it up with. What's the key word for the age of Aquarius?
Information.
What age are we in now?
Straight either Pisces or.
No, it's not either or.
Well, because there's disagreement on where it begins and ends.
Turn.
Well, as far as timeline.
Relative
There's
to
a
what?
there's probably a disagreement of, understanding where we are in the cycle.
What's the key word for Pisces? Do you know?
The fish?
Key word, that's a symbol. Okay, the point I'm raising is the point I raised before, is the point of these classes. This thing. I think the sister back here was telling me, she said she was talking to the younger brothers and they were talking about, what's the importance of this or whatever, and I was asking, I told her to ask them, how deep is deep? And how deep is black? How deep is black? Black is in our mind is infinite. How deep do we think? We can be very shallow. That's why we're not getting out of the situation. We have bits and pieces of knowledge, but we don't savor the knowledge. We don't go deeper into the knowledge. We shouldn't, anything that we hold within our mind that interests us, we should follow it because it's there for a purpose. And, and I'm here to put pressure on us because we're our own salvation. Salvation is the mind. So then the question is, if you're dealing with these ages, then you need to research the age. Because your mind is attracted to it for a reason. Different things you're attracted to it for a reason. It ain't nothing by chance. It's nothing by chance. You just don't understand the meaning of it. Because nothing happens by chance. Nothing. Everything that happens to you is the purpose and the meaning for it. So when your mind is attracted to something, it's trying to lead you somewhere. But what comes on is your conditioning keeps you from following it. So we abort our own salvation. Now, age of Aquarius, when she's talking about, everybody, are people familiar with the great ages, the ages, astrological ages? What's the time period, duration for an astrological age?
26,000 years or so.
That's a great year. That's not an age.
Okay.
That's a year, a great year. It's a great year.
2,160 years, I think, for an age or something like that.
Basically what they're talking about, and what is that defined by? What defines that? Anybody? No. Yeah. See, again, the point I'm raising is we're talking about stuff that we really don't understand. You don't really understand it. But yet you're using it, is the whole epistemology, the basis of knowledge, the foundation for the assumptions of truth. We don't go all the way back. So then we're still living in the Piscean age. Piscean age is the age, the key word for the Piscean age is I believe. It's the age of blind faith. Piscean, the Christian era, is what? If you just believe on Jesus, or the Word, as they give it to you, you're saved. If you question it, doubting it, which means you're going to have a burning hell.
Go ahead. Ooh, teach.
Blind.
No
Having
question.
faith without knowing why you believe in it.
No question. Yeah.
Blind.
No question.
Your eyes is closed, but you're still going along with it. You really can't see. But you follow it, but you really don't see.
Suppose you think your eyes are open, you're still blind.
You're still blind. But you claim.
I'm asking, because a lot of us running around here, we still got scalp on our eyes, we still got eyes.
Right, but again, it goes back to the issue is, what is the foundation for your assumption?
Would it be your lifestyle and your experience?
It definitely is your lifestyle and experience. The experience itself. All you are is what you experience.
Suppose you find out that those experiences is negated because of wrong.
Then your experiences is changing, so yourself will be changing. That's why the only way we're going to change people is to change the experience. The age of Aquarius, the key word is I believe. And if I need to find the key thing is blind faith. If you just look at the major issues during that period of time, you believe things because people said it was true. You really matter believing it because people said they believed it. Not because they had been trained to understand it. The age of Aquarius is the age of I know. It's a key word. So it's an age of knowledge. If you listen to, in every age, you're going to see those main ideas popping up. If you look around you see what everybody's talking about. We're talking about knowing, knowledge, science. And then if you look at even the business world, with the next age is the age of a knowledge worker. So, the age of
Just kind of back up for a second. I didn't quite understand what you're saying. Define. The question was, how long was an age?
Right,
And then you said define that?
right.
How would you define
What
that?
was the basis of that?
The basis of the
On the length
Right.
of an age?
Right. What determines an age? What determines the great year? Because you guys said, I said age, you said 26,000, I said 26,000 is a great year.
Okay.
I said, okay, now what determines the great year? What determines that 26,000?
That would be the time it would take for this solar system to make one complete circle, wouldn't it?
Relative to what?
Relative to,
Remember we talked about time 2 sessions ago. We said time is measured on duration.
okay.
So you're measuring something from one point to another point. If I'm 40 plus 45, then that means that I've had 45 solar returns. The sun has went around 365 days, 45 times. Which determines I'm 45. If it's 60, 1 hour, it's really the movement of the sun, really moving so much space, which we can calculate and put it into a clock, where this hand moves at the same ratio that the sun is moving around. We're really moving around the sun.
Right.
So then you're saying that if the core of the solar system takes to go around, what is it measured against?
Yeah, circumscribed by access to the earth. Insight.
Relative to what?
Well, relative to whatever to the starting point, and it's got to completely circumscribe.
You're talking in the abstract.
Okay.
You're talking conceptually. Now, specifically, how does that concept operate based upon this question? That's when politicians talk, right? We want to know when you'll get the money down into the community so we can, how much? So,
You say time is different.
yeah, it's duration. Time is the duration of experience, so it happens. The duration of a set of experiences. So if you say daytime, right, that's the duration of light. Nighttime is the duration of dark. Rainy season was the duration of rain. Dry season was the duration when everything was dry. Planting season was the duration of time that you can plant and the stuff will still grow. So all time is duration. Your life is the duration of when you was born, when you died. Dynasty was when the pharaoh and that family ruled. When they died out, a new pharaoh came up with a new name, a new family group, it was a new dynasty. Still time. Time is just really the measurement of activity through space. Without space, you have no time. There ain't gonna be no level. We always to the divine level and say it wasn't time. Time is illusion at the absolute level because everything is one. But anyway, let's get back to this. Basically, what we're talking about is you're talking about line out here. We got out here. Okay, basically it's different. So what determines the rate here? That's what I'm going to do right now. Okay. Okay, basically, let's see here. We got, this is the sun, this is the planets, right? Okay. The sun has an orbit. Okay. So everything in the universe has an orbit. The sun is spinning around. When it's on axis, the sun's spinning. The planets are going around the sun, and they spin on an axis. And the whole solar system is moving through space. You can read my slide presentation. They're moving through space. That's right. The solar system is moving through space. Because we're part of the Milky Way galaxy. Our solar system is just one of many solar systems within the cluster of solar systems that make up the Milky Way galaxy. The universe is made up of many galaxies. Okay. So that Milky Way galaxy is in a spiral, because everything in the universe is in a spiral. So it's spiraling, and the galaxy is going through the universe. And there's probably greater cycles that we haven't even been able to, get far enough to even see yet. Because we haven't even get to the end of our galaxy yet. And we haven't even got to the end of our solar system yet. But you got to get out beyond Pluto. So then, now, the stars, the constellations, are outside our galaxy, our solar system. So the constellation, the stars that we see in the sky, are outside our solar system, which is beyond Pluto. And the distance between the stars that we see is just as great as the distance between our sun and those stars. Just looking at the relative space we're talking about. And here we are, these little bitty things way down here, thinking we all that. If the solar system were to explode, it wouldn't change the universe one bit. That's why on a cosmic level, there ain't no such thing as right and wrong. The universe don't care. It's all energy. So we blow up, energy just transforms into something comes, does float around or whatever, who knows. Just to give ourselves some perspective. Our solar system is traveling now relative to the constellations. The thing we call the zodiac is only about 18 degrees. You look out, you have the equator of the earth, right? If you take that equator of the earth and you extend it out into space like an imaginary line, just like you look at the horizon, right? The east, look at the east. If you extend an imaginary line all the way out into space, that's like the celestial horizon. So as we're looking, really our earth is spinning. And as stars, when we think of stars rising, it's just the earth spinning, and we're moving into the sight of the star. But it looks like the star is going this way, or the sun is going this way. Really, we're spinning. And we turn around 24 hours, and makes us have the sun go around 24 hours, right? So anyway, the point is the constellations are out here. Now, we have thousands, probably millions of constellations. What we call the zodiac, those 12 signs, there are a series of constellations that are within an 18 degree, 9 degrees above, 9 degrees below the equator. And project out, there's, the imaginary line. What we see in this band are called the zodiacal signs. These are different constellations. We've given them names, well, ancients gave them names because of the phenomena that was happening on the earth while we were aligned with that particular group of stars. I'm saying that, what do you need to get it? The constellation Aries. Well, Aries is the ram. Okay, Aries is a fire sign. Aries represents the beginning of things. So when we talk about Aries, we really talk about springtime. So if you look at springtime, what's going on? The ram, right? New life, energy, activity. The sap is raising up in the trees. Flowers is blooming. You hear birds chirping. If you become conscious of nature, you can see these changes happening around you. Most of us ain't even aware. We just out here doing what we're doing. If you become conscious, you will see the changes happening right in front of your face. If you get to a street that's like directly east and west and start becoming conscious of the rise and setting of the sun, you will see the sun it oscillates back and forth like this. It'll start rising further and further and further and further south, and then it'll start rising back till they get north. And so it's doing, remember I showed you the equator and how the tropical Cancer, tropical Capricorn, and how the sun goes between those tropics. That's what creates the season. So anyway.
You said that the equatorial plane.
Right. So that's real equator.
Plus or minus 9 degrees.
Right. Above and below that equator. Imaginary line is projected in space, 18 degrees, 9 above, 9 below. Those set of constellations that we see in there represents the zodiac signs. Okay. And there are all kinds of constellations that give us a story related to that. Now, when the sun, the sun is crossing, we got the equator, right? Then you got the tropic of, I get this mixed up sometimes, tropic of Cancer and tropic of Capricorn. When the sun hits the equator, that's spring. When it moves up to the top, it has to move down. Goes to Cancer, that's summer. It moves up, that's winter. Again, the fall, when it hits that line, like this line right here. Right here in the spring. I'm trying to get to the spring. I'm trying to figure this thing out. It's really in the north. The northern horizon. This is Cancer. Okay. So it's going here, here, and there. So this is Aries, spring. Cancer is summer. Libra is fall, and Capricorn is winter. And I can sure talk about the Christ myth, the birth of the Christ, the resurrection, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's connected really to this scenario of light and dark. So this is light and this is dark. You know, longer days, shorter nights, shorter days. And that stuff is connected to melanin and the production of melanin, melatonin that's related to outer skin color, but internally you have melanin in the inside, in your brain and all your organs. It's also related to activation of sensitivity to radiation, both light and sound. But that's another. Let me cut this short. The point is when the sun hits the equator in the spring, the constellation that is on the horizon, the celestial constellation that is on the horizon, is related to what age we're in. Okay? It takes the sun 26,000 years to make its orbit through those constellations, where it will come back to the same constellation. So the constellation is basically fixed relative to us. So then, if you divide 26,000 years by 12, you basically get about 2,160 years, roughly. And you got to give or take, it's not exactly even. Some constellations are longer, some are shorter. So basically, what we're saying is if we divided this into 12 pieces, think about 12. It takes the sun approximately 2,160 years to travel through the distance of a constellation. Because up here, this would be Pisces. And then over here is Aquarius. Okay, then you got Capricorn, then you got Sagittarius, then you got Scorpio, then you got Libra, then you got Virgo, then you got Leo, then you have Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, and then Aries. So each of those is one of the divisions.
So what you're saying is every 2,100 years,
it takes us to travel through that constellation.
so what you're saying is
It creates a different celestial season that
humans go through a significant change.
humans are affected because remember, we are all of us with energy. Everything is energy. Our skin is this is just energy vibrating at a slower rate. It creates physical stuff. If you go up, everything is energy. The thoughts are energy. Okay. So, you know, what makes your skin? Molecules made out of atoms, and atoms made out of electrons and protons. And anytime you have electrons and protons, you have electromagnetic field. That means that we have an electromagnetic field. That means everything in the universe has electromagnetic field. If you understand electronics, a greater electromagnetic field will influence a lesser electromagnetic field. Right? So then it will actually create those electrons to line up on the polarity of the greater field. So then as we're going through this different celestial season, it's equated to a different energy frequency. The different energy frequency then becomes reflected in humans as certain types of characteristics or values. Now, everything has a positive and a negative. So the way we relate to it depends upon our consciousness. Because energy follows thought. That means where your head is at is going to channel the direction the energy goes. So if your head is in a negative place, you will reflect it as being negative. If it's in a positive place, you will reflect it in a positive. So like in the age of Pisces, Pisces dealt with blind faith, suffering, confinement. It also dealt with spirituality, extrasensory perception, fantasy, illusion, also poetry, art, creativity. So then, depending upon the content of the human being is how they use that in either a positive or a negative way.
Another question.
Yeah.
My question, is so many things that I'm so
We say, without the 7 liberal arts and sciences, you can't comprehend, because the 7 liberal arts and sciences deal with what? Number 1 is astronomy.
Right.
But astronomy is just not understanding how many stars in the sun, it's also understanding the relationship between those celestial bodies and human experience and experience on the planet. Then the next thing is geometry, because what are these patterns?
Triangle.
These are different patterns. And then as we're seeing, then these planets, they're spinning around. You got planets at different rates of speed. Each of the planets are spinning, and then they're related to one another, and the sun is in the center, and the sun is radiating electromagnetic radiation out through the solar system, because that's what keeps the planets in orbit. The Earth is in the middle of all this electromagnetic energy, and as these planets change relationships, some come together, then they split apart. Like if I had 10 lights, I brought all those lights together and put it in your face, that stuff would burn you. I scatter them out, you be more mellow. I mean, 3 or 4 of them together, they have a different effect on you. This is going on constantly, right? And so each of those different relationships create a different geometrical pattern. Now, geometry can be, if you understand geometry, different patterns, then you relate to different qualities or number. Because in number you say, well, now it's 5, now it's 2, now it's 3, and those numbers have significance. Then music is harmony, right? So different relationships of rhythm and frequency. So then we go into rhetoric, grammar, and logic, because logic says, okay, what's the reason, what's happening here? Logic, we talked about logic. So what I'm saying is, these were the fundamental probationary information that one had to gain mastery and proficiency of before you went into initiation.
So if you just sold out of the sun later years, and you say sold in part in energy, right?
Right.
So how do we get to choose what body we go into once we want to be reborn again in physical form?
The body chooses, well, I almost want to say the body chooses you. Now, why do I say that? I say everything is energy, right? However you go out, that's the end. You take your life, right? Your life is moments. So every moment of your life, are you living to your highest potential? Are you living to your greatest capability? Or sometimes, I'm depressed and I'm tripping and, whatever. All that time you wasting, that's moments, right? So like, it's almost like a tape recorder. Everything you do, everything you think, and everything you feel is recorded in your own energy field. So at the end of your life, all those experiences are added up. All the negatives and all the positives are added together, and whatever the quality is, that's what you go out on. Okay? Now, when a body comes together, because see, a body is born at a particular time and space. Right? Everybody's born at a particular time and space, a latitude and longitude in this solar system, that at that particular time has a certain quality, which then means that that particular quality will have a certain type of possibility. When that quality matches the quality of the energy of your spiritual soul, it's like a tuning fork, right? And they match, and it'll just so you determine what you're going to be attracted to by the life you live. You determine your own destiny. So it's not, we have a tendency to want to think, I'm thinking, like, oh, I'm going to choose, like, you got to think like God is a person, and he said, oh, I'm going to get him, I'm going to mess with her, and, that it's like consciousness, it's like cosmic laws that operate regardless of what we think. It operates regardless of what we think. And so, it's in it, everything is based down to energy. Like we say, the vibes,
So if you're trying to change your life, and all of a sudden we know what's right inside,
Right.
and we're changing, all of a sudden we have a car accident and we were killed in that car accident. What happens then is the soul says, oh, she was trying to change her life and she knows what time it is, so she's going to go back as that person, or is she going to go back
Go back as what person?
as the person she was trying to be before the car accident?
You're going to come back as the body that's going to provide you with the experience that matches the quality of your energy.
And don't you check?
If you change your consciousness, and not just say, well, I'm about to die, so I'm going to say, oh, forgive me because I don't want to go to hell. So you say it. So you can't fool energy just because in your own mind you're trying to, rationalize. That's why they say when they weigh you in the scale, what do they weigh in the scale? Right? They weigh your heart. They didn't weigh your mind, although they say in Kemetic that your heart is in your mind. What it means is what's really in your heart is what really counts. You can say, oh, brother, I love you, man, yeah, right on. But in your heart, you're playing a role.
Right.
You might be playing a role. And in your mind, you might be tripled. In your heart, you really like, don't believe that stuff. That's what's going to be the thing that's your true energy. So if your heart really changes, then your energy will really change. And so the whole thing is really consciousness reality. Where are you at? Where are you at? Really? Are you governed by they say you have to lose the world to gain it. What they mean is you have to turn your back on what the outer world is expecting of you and follow what inside is needing. So that once you start to be driven by that, you're going to be aligning yourself with the spiritual things. So you ain't got to worry about it. Okay, so anyway, we kind of basically what we're saying is, in terms of the great year, 26,000 years, it takes roughly 2,160 years, roughly, say we travel 1 degree every 72 years.
How many?
1 degree every 72 years. And it's traveling in a reverse manner. I mean, this is a whole other lecture, really. This is like we can get into this. So there's like 7 major rhythms in the universe. 1 degree every 72 years. 1 degree every 72 years.
So,
well, he finished.
so each, I guess there's a relationship between the planets and each of the different ages.
And is ruled by a planet. See you have to understand that some of this stuff is symbolical and philosophical. Okay? Which means that, because basically what this stuff defines is the relationship between the forces of life.
Right.
Every sign, like Aries is, you have dialectics, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, or male, female, male, female, male, female. Then you got the 4 elements of fire, earth, air, and water. Fire, earth, air, and water. Fire, earth, air, and water. That's the 4 elements.
And
then you got cardinal, fixed, immutable, cardinal, fixed, immutable, which is action, reaction, synthesis, action, reaction, synthesis. There's 3. So you have the 3 triune. God operates the Trinity, right? Father, mother, and offspring. Action, reaction, and synthesis. Activity, substance, form. Those 3. Then you have the 4 elements: fire, earth, air, and water. And you combine the 3 and the 4. 3 times 4 gives you 12. 12 signs of the zodiac is a combination of the Trinity and the 4 elements, which creates the 12 functions of how life expresses itself. There's a whole philosophical thing about astrology. You see, in metaphysics, everything has a philosophical system, and then it has a divinatory system. Divination, when I take a birth chart, I can tell you about yourself, new person, and all that. Taking these concepts and related how it relates to you as a person. But at the same time, astrology is a philosophy of life, for how each one of these relates to one another. You know, Aries is I am, self-realization. Taurus is I have, what you have to be who you are. Gemini is I think, what do you think about what you have to who you are. Cancer is I feel, what do you feel about what you think about what you have to be who you are. Leo is I will, so what will you do about what you feel about what you think about what you have about who you are. You know, I analyze is Virgo. Now, I analyze what I will by what I feel, by what I think, by what I have, by who I am, right? Then Libra, I balance. I balance what I've analyzed based upon what I will, based upon what I feel, what I think, what I have, who I am. Then Scorpio, I desire. I desire, then Sagittarius, I see. Then Capricorn is I use. Then Aquarius, I know. Then Pisces, I believe. To believe is supposed to be based upon what you know, based upon what you use, based upon what you see, based upon what you desire, based upon what you balance between your this and that. So, because the first half of the zodiac is personal, from Aries to Virgo is personal development, and from Libra to Pisces is social development. So it tells you for a person to have a meaningful social relationship, they need to develop themselves first. Aries and Libra, Aries is I am, Libra is we are. Libra relates to marriage. So then you have a good marriage, you got to know who you are. So both parties have to know who they are to have a balanced relationship.
Sure.
So I mean, you know, it's the whole thing about life.
Can you think of any good references that?
In terms of books?
Yeah, that I can, you know, something at beginner's level, so I can get a little bit deeper.
Outstanding book is called The Spiral of Life by Joanne Wickenburg. Spiral of Life. And then she has another one. What's the other one? I got The Spiral of Life is an excellent book. Then they have another book called The Only Way to Learn Astrology, I believe it is, by Mac Evers. Remind me, and I'll bring them this in. I'll bring the book in. Joanne Wickenburg's book is excellent because she combines metaphysics, psychology, symbolism, and all that. From all of our way that was look at it like this. These are spirals. This is things close, Got okay. Spirals. See this. In the center, and then you take these here, and they would branch out like that. In different divisions. So we're going up these spirals. So every great year, evolution is going on, right? Because we've had these Aquarius before, right? But now we're on a different level, so it has a different meaning. But what determines the constellation, what determines the location, is physically what constellation is active on the horizon that spring. You know, where we physically, if you go out and look out there, we would be within the last degrees of Pisces, constellation Pisces. And so then, you know, we're moving out of that into Aquarius.
Okay, so you can see that.
Right.
But you had to, in order to determine that you are in the last degree of Pisces and not some other, you had to have a point, a reference that allowed you to determine that this was in fact Pisces.
It's a clustering, you have a constellation. Constellation is a clustering of stars. Mm-hmm. And so then that clustering of stars then defines the space. The cluster of stars takes up a certain amount of space within the zodiac band. And so relative to sighting points like the pyramids, you know, they were like observation towers that looked straight to certain equinoctial points. Mm-hmm. And when they looked through these points and saw a particular constellation cross that point at a certain time of the year, then that's how they started finding it. And what they started doing is they started seeing things happen on the earth, and they started to look at the constellation and saw, well, dang, every time Sirius rises before the sun, the Nile floods. So then they knew that, well, when I see Sirius from the rise, I know that the sun, that the flood's coming. So they start calling it the dog star, right? Because the dog barks and lets you know when something's coming. So that's why Sirius is a dog star. Okay. And so then the mythology in the heavens is really the projection of what was going on the earth relative to what was happening in the heavens. And so now, defining Aries, is basically where Aries is defined like in springtime. So thusly, it had to be a cycle of time. Right. So in recording these cycles of time, that means you recorded activity that was going on during the different periods of time. The activity, the characteristics of the activity used as a symbol to represent the characteristics of the major activity that was going on during the time.
What's the significance
Incarnating now are souls that were active during kinetic time. And then because the energy that is needed, see, the earth calls what it needs. See, all of us are like cells in the body. And so when you find yourself born at a certain time, you can't even do work. So then, that's why you got to listen to your mind, because it knows its orders. You just, we don't listen to the orders. Find yourself in a certain location at a certain time is indicating that this is part of the work you got to deal with. Because in past lives, you develop skills and abilities that's going to fit you to deal with the situation. With the lymphocytes energy, if you take your energy away from that, what's left is your intuitional energy. And intuitional energy is the voice of the soul. It's always trying to talk to you 24/7. But there's so much noise, like static, you can't get the message because there's too much static going on. We tripping, we worry, we high, we drunk, we hungry, we worry about clothes. Build the bridge between the old and the new. Right. Age of Aquarius is an air sign. Air relates to the intellect. It relates to the mind. Now the water, the other thing that's interesting is that the symbolism for Hapi is the waters pouring out of the picture. Age of Aquarius is the age of Hapi. Hapi is the Nile, and the Nile is the foundation for the Kemetic civilization, which is the fountainhead and the highest expression of African civilization and culture. So then the Aquarian age is actually the age of the mysteries, because the mysteries and this higher knowledge was the foundation of Kemet. And so those waters pouring down are actually the waters of initiation, pouring down on the masses. They say the new age, the age of Aquarius, is the age of mass initiation. In the past, it was only individuals to be initiated. The age of Aquarius has become the age where the human race will be initiated into the higher knowledge. It's going to take 2,000 years. So we're going to move from the age of Aquarius, which is I know, into the age of Pisces or Capricorn, which is I use. Then we're going to move to the age of Sagittarius, which is I see. So it's going to take 2,000 plus, 2,000 plus, till we get to I see, till we really see as a human race, which relatively speaking is a very short period of time. In little small increments.